Ancient maps held secret territories of pure fantasy, realms that shaped our world more than any real coastline. These lost mythic landscapes, from islands of gold to cities of giants, were once believed to exist just beyond the horizon. By the end of our journey, you will understand the profound human desires that created these legends and how they drove real exploration, expanding our maps and our minds. We will uncover why entire societies were convinced of phantom continents and what the search for them reveals about our deepest fears and greatest ambitions. What story of a lost world has always captured your own imagination? A great bronze bell tolls across the water, a final, mournful sound for an empire of impossible technology and wisdom. This is the haunting echo of Atlantis, the first and most famous of all lost mythic landscapes. Its story comes to us from the ancient philosopher Plato, who wrote of a formidable naval power that existed around 9,600 years before his own time. He described a vast island, larger than Asia and Libya combined, rich in resources and advanced in every art from architecture to governance. Yet its people grew arrogant, and in a single day and night of terrible misfortune, the entire kingdom was swallowed by the sea, vanishing without a trace. Plato presented this as a moral lesson, a warning about the dangers of hubris for any nation that believes itself invincible. But his allegory took on a life of its own, escaping the page to capture the human spirit. For centuries, scholars and explorers have searched for a real-world inspiration. Some point to the colossal volcanic eruption on the island of Terra, which decimated the Minoan civilization. Others suggest a location in the mud flats of southern Spain, where geological features might match the description. The true power of Atlantis, however, lies not in its potential coordinates, but in its enduring symbolism. It represents a golden age of human achievement, a perfect society that was tragically lost to a natural disaster. It asks us a profound question. Could a cataclysm of such magnitude have completely erased an advanced civilization from our historical record, leaving only a ghost in the stories we tell? As the imagined spires of Atlantis fade into the deep, our search for lost worlds rises from the ocean to find a paradise of a very different kind. That idyllic garden, a realm of perfect peace and innocence, stands in stark contrast to the glittering obsession of our next destination. Where Eden represents a spiritual beginning, the legend of El Dorado speaks entirely to worldly ambition. The name itself means the Golden One, and it originated not with a city, but with a person. In the highlands of what is now Colombia, the Muisca people held a ceremony for a new leader. The chieftain would be covered from head to toe in powdered gold, and then, aboard a raft laden with gold and emeralds, he would journey to the center of Lake Guatavita. There he would wash the precious dust from his body as an offering to the gods, a dazzling ritual that cemented his power. Spanish conquistadors, hearing fragments of this story, twisted it into a vision of an entire city made of gold, a place where wealth was as common as stone. This misconception ignited a fever that would burn for centuries. Expeditions of thousands of men, like that of Gonzalo Pizarro, hacked their way through unforgiving jungles, driven by a greed that often cost them their lives. They were chasing a phantom, a mirage born from a cultural misunderstanding. The true El Dorado was never a place you could find on a map. It was a moment, a ritual, a testament to a culture that understood the sacred value of gold, not its monetary price. The legend consumed countless lives in its pursuit, a stark reminder that the most dangerous mythic landscapes are not those lost to the sea, but those we build from our own insatiable desires. The air is thick with the scent of jungle orchids and the distant, hypnotic beat of ceremonial drums. a chieftain stands at the edge of a hidden lake, his body a living statue of sunlight, covered from head to toe in fine gold dust. This was the true El Dorado, not a place but a person. For the Muisca people of the Colombian highlands, this was a sacred rite of passage, a moment where a new leader connected with the divine. He would board a raft laden with gold figurines and glittering emeralds, a floating offering, and journey to the lake's center. There, he would wash the golden dust from his body, a dazzling surrender of wealth back to the water gods, a profound act that cemented his spiritual authority. This ceremony was a cornerstone of their culture, a demonstration of value that had nothing to do with coin and everything to do with faith. When Spanish conquistadors heard whispers of this golden man, their minds, conditioned by centuries of quests for treasure, could not comprehend the ritual's true meaning. They filtered the story through a lens of pure greed, transforming the Golden One into a golden city. They dreamed of a metropolis with temples of gold and streets paved with precious stones, a place where wealth was so common it was mundane. This fantasy, this phantom city they painted in their minds, ignited an obsession that would burn for generations. Expeditions of thousands of men, like that of Gonzalo Pizarro, plunged into the continent's heart, hacking through vicious jungles and facing unimaginable hardship. They were chasing a ghost, a legend born from their own inability to see the world through any eyes but their own. They projected their deepest material fantasies onto a landscape they did not understand, and in doing so, they missed the real treasure entirely. Modern archaeology has since uncovered the truth, unearthing stunning gold artifacts from the region, like the famous Muisca raft figurine that depicts the very ceremony they ignored. These finds prove that while the City of Gold was a European fiction, the sophisticated culture that inspired it was profoundly real and rich in its own right. The desperate quest for El Dorado stands as a permanent lesson in the destructive power of avarice, a cautionary tale of how the desire for mere metal can blind us to the true gold of human understanding. This lust for earthly treasure consumed countless lives, but our next destination was sought for a far more profound and elusive prize, a treasure that could not be melted down or spent, the very secret of life without end. A hidden spring bubbles with water that seems to capture light itself, a liquid promise to reverse time and restore the vigor of youth. This is the Fountain of Youth, a legend that transformed from a medieval traveler's tale into a force that redrew the map of the New World. The story was popularized in Europe by the writings of Sir John Mandeville, who spoke of a restorative well in the East, but it became irrevocably tied to history through the voyages of the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon. As the story goes, he was searching for this very fountain when he first sighted the coastline of Florida in 1513. He was not a foolish man chasing a fairy tale, but a seasoned conquistador likely seeking new lands to claim and new peoples to convert. Yet the myth of the fountain was so potent, so deeply embedded in the European imagination, that it became the publicly celebrated reason for his journey. This legend taps into one of our most profound and universal anxieties, the fear of decline and the end that awaits us all. It represents the ultimate quest for a biological cure-all, a desire to conquer our own mortality. While no such magical waters were ever found, the very real and consequential search for them led directly to the European discovery and colonization of Florida. This is a stunning example of how a pure fantasy can have tangible, lasting effects on human history, setting in motion centuries of cultural exchange and conflict. The pursuit of eternal life is a powerful driver, but our next landscape offered a different kind of eternity, not in a fountain's waters, but in the silent, vast darkness beneath our feet. A hollow echo rings out with every strike of the pickaxe, a sound that suggests not solid ground, but an immense, empty space waiting below. This is the compelling fantasy of the hollow Earth, a theory that our planet is not a dense ball of rock and metal, but a shell containing other worlds within it. The concept was championed by serious thinkers, including the famed astronomer Edmund Halley. He proposed that Earth was a series of concentric spheres, each with its own atmosphere and possibly even life, all lit by a luminous inner air to explain strange magnetic fluctuations. This idea was later popularized by an American Army officer, John Cleves Sims, Jr., who so fervently believed in it that he campaigned for an expedition to find the massive, warm holes he was convinced existed at the North and South Poles. For believers, the eerie glow of the aurora borealis was not a solar phenomenon, but the radiant light of a central sun leaking out through these polar openings. This myth captured the ultimate terrestrial frontier, a blank space on the map that was not across the ocean, but directly beneath our feet. It became a staple of adventure fiction, most famously in Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth, where heroes discover a vast subterranean ocean, prehistoric creatures, and giant mushrooms. While modern seismology has proven our world is overwhelmingly solid, the hollow Earth idea endures not as a physical reality, but as a powerful metaphor. It represents the profound human urge to explore the final unknown, to believe that the greatest mysteries are still hidden in the depths, both of our planet and of our own minds. What undiscovered parts of ourselves might we encounter on such an inward journey? From the imagined depths of the planet's core, our search for lost landscapes now ascends to the rooftop of the world, to a kingdom hidden among the highest and most forbidding peaks. High in the thin, crystalline air of the Himalayas, a kingdom is waiting. Shambhala is not merely a city hidden by snow and mist. It is a sanctuary of the spirit, described in ancient Tibetan Buddhist texts as a pure land where an enlightened society lives in harmony. Its people guard the Kalachakra, the wheel of time teachings, preserving this profound wisdom for a future age when conflict and darkness will sweep the world. Then, it is said, a great king will emerge from Shambhala to lead a final battle against the forces of ignorance, restoring peace and balance to all. This is not just a story about a hidden valley, it is a prophecy of hope. The journey to Shambhala is a central part of its mystery. Ancient guides describe a physical path through nearly impassable mountains, a route that twists and turns through treacherous landscapes. Yet the texts are clear that only those whose minds are purified, who have accumulated the right karma, will ever find the way. For everyone else, the kingdom remains invisible, its passes appearing as solid rock. This makes Shambhala a unique dual destination, a place on the map that is also a state of being. The allure of this hidden utopia has drawn real-world explorers for centuries. The Russian mystic and artist Nicholas Roerich led a lengthy expedition through Central Asia in the 1920s, fervently seeking signs of the kingdom, convinced its spiritual energy was a tangible force. His quest, blending art, science, and mysticism, shows how powerfully this myth could motivate human endeavor. Over time, the ideal of Shambhala has been interpreted in many ways, sometimes adopted by esoteric groups or even twisted for political purposes, yet its core meaning remains untarnished. It endures as a powerful symbol of a perfected society guided not by human whim but by timeless spiritual law. It asks us a quiet, personal question. What inner mountains must we climb, what ignorance must we leave behind to find our own place of perfect peace? The hope for a sanctuary across the sea, a different kind of promised land, would soon capture the European imagination with a different kind of intensity. A dense, persistent fog shrouds the Atlantic west of Ireland, and within it, sailors whispered of an island that was not always there. This is Hy-Brasil, the island of the blessed, a phantom that graced nautical charts for over 500 years. Cartographers drew it as a perfect circle, often split down the middle by a single, straight river, a geometric oddity in a world of ragged coastlines. According to the law, the island would materialize from its veil of mist for just one day every 7 years, a tantalizing but nearly impossible target for any mariner. The stories from those who claimed to have breached its shores were extraordinary. Some spoke of a civilization possessing remarkable knowledge, while others told of a land where time stood still and the inhabitants never aged. These accounts were deeply rooted in ancient Celtic mythology, which envisioned islands in the Western Sea as thin places, gateways to the otherworld, a realm of deities and eternal feasts. It is a profound coincidence that this mythical island's name, Hy-Brasil, would later be given to a vast, real nation an ocean away, a twist of fate that forever linked a Celtic vision to a South American reality. The endurance of this spectral island on official maps, long after explorers had charted the North Atlantic, is a testament to the power of story over fact. It proves that a compelling legend could convince even the most practical of navigators to leave a blank space on their charts for magic. This belief in a blessed isle waiting in the west would soon be joined by an even grander ambition, the search for a kingdom that combined immense earthly power with legendary piety. A letter written in the 12th century promised a salvation that was both spiritual and military. It claimed to be from a king so magnificent his very name commanded reverence, Prester John, a Christian ruler of immense power and piety, reigning over a vast empire in the distant east. His kingdom, as described in the forged document that spread like wildfire through the courts of Europe, was a land of impossible wonders. It contained the fountain of youth and was protected by the legendary gates of Alexander, holding back monstrous tribes. Its rivers flowed with precious stones, and its soil produced pepper in such abundance that it was as common as grass. For Europeans embroiled in the Crusades, this was more than a fairy tale, it was a strategic hope. Here was a powerful Christian ally poised to attack the Muslim world from the rear, a divine intervention that would turn the tide of holy war. This compelling fiction drove real exploration for centuries. It encouraged Portuguese navigators like Prince Henry the Navigator to send ships ever further down the African coastline, each hoping to find a route to Prester John's realm and secure his alliance. When no such kingdom was found in Asia, the legend simply shifted, moving to the highlands of Ethiopia, where an ancient Christian kingdom did indeed exist, though it was nothing like the mythical empire of pearls and pepper. The enduring power of the Prester John story reveals a medieval worldview where faith, geography, and pure marvel were inseparable. It was a map of desire, charting a deep yearning for a global Christian community and a powerful friend in a world that felt increasingly hostile. The search for this spiritual ally reshaped the real map of Africa and Asia, proving once again that a phantom can guide the course of history. This hope for a distant kingdom built on faith was profound, but our next lost landscape offered something different, not an ally in conflict, but a sanctuary for the soul, a destination for pure personal spiritual renewal. A sorrowful song drifts across a misty lake, a chorus of women's voices bidding farewell to a king carried upon a funeral barge, his body broken by his final, fateful battle. This is the haunting departure for Avalon, the mythical Isle of Apples, a sanctuary of healing and magic drawn from the deep well of Celtic mythology. In the writings of Geoffrey of Monmouth, this island emerges from the fog of legend as the place where the great King Arthur was taken to have his mortal wounds tended. It was here, in this realm that blurred the lines between the earthly and the otherworld, that his legendary sword Excalibur was first forged. The island is intimately tied to the enchantress Morgan Le Fay, often portrayed as its ruler, a figure who wields magic not for malice but for profound restoration. The human desire to connect myth to the physical world is powerfully evident at Glastonbury Tor in England. This striking hill, with its solitary tower, was once an island rising from the surrounding marshes and water. For centuries, this tangible, awe-inspiring place has been proposed as a potential inspiration for Avalon, a location where the veil between our world and the legendary one feels impossibly thin. More than just a geographical location, Avalon represents a profound and comforting idea, the restorative retreat. It is the belief that our greatest heroes are not truly gone, but are merely resting in a timeless, protected space, waiting to return when the world needs them most. It is a promise of healing after immense struggle, a second chance held in reserve by destiny itself. From this mist-shrouded isle of Arthurian hope, our journey turns toward a paradise of a very different nature, one not of healing from battle, but of eternal, blissful existence, hidden deep within the remote mountains of the east. A place exists where time itself seems to slow its relentless march, a secluded valley nestled within the Kunlun Mountains where harmony is not an ideal but a daily reality. This is Shangri-La, a name that has come to represent the ultimate peaceful refuge. While James Hilton's novel Lost Horizon brought this paradise into the modern Western mind, its roots dig deep into ancient Tibetan traditions of Baal. These are not merely hidden valleys, but sacred lands, spiritual sanctuaries believed to have been consecrated by great teachers. The legends say these Baal are revealed only in times of great hardship, offering a protected space where the essence of wisdom and compassion can be preserved, safe from the turmoil of the outside world. Hilton's story arrived in the turbulent years between two global conflicts, a period shadowed by uncertainty and technological violence. To a weary world, the idea of Shangri-La was a balm for the spirit. It was a vision of a society that had mastered inner peace, where the frantic pace of modern life was replaced by quiet contemplation and the pursuit of knowledge. The inhabitants were said to live for centuries, their long lives a testament to a culture free from the stresses that shorten our own. This powerful myth has proven so compelling that it has reshaped our real-world geography. The town of Zhongdian in China's Yunnan province officially renamed itself Shangri-La, transforming a physical location to match a spiritual dream and drawing travelers in search of that very feeling of tranquility. This act shows the tangible power of a story, how a fictional paradise can bestow its name upon a real mountain and valley. The yearning for Shangri-La is a universal one, a deep human longing for a sanctuary where the best parts of us are kept safe from the chaos of history. Yet, while this hidden valley promised serene isolation, other legendary lands were defined not by peace, but by a presence of overwhelming and fearsome power. Far to the north, beyond the realm of ice and bitter gales, the ancient Greeks envisioned a sanctuary bathed in endless sunlight. This was the land of the Hyperboreans, a race of giants who lived in a state of perfect bliss, untouched by the hardships that defined mortal life. For them, there was no old age, no illness, and no conflict, only an eternal festival of music, dance, and feasting, all devoted to their patron, the god Apollo. The poet Pindar wrote that this blessed land could not be reached by ship or by land, a place that existed conceptually beyond the known world, insulated from the suffering that plagued humanity. This myth almost certainly grew from faint, tantalizing reports from traders who traveled to the far north, stories of the midnight sun where daylight persisted through the night during the Arctic summer. The Greeks, living in a world with defined seasons and cycles of light and dark, interpreted these accounts as evidence of a literal paradise, a golden age preserved in a distant, frozen corner of the earth. It was a land for the chosen, a symbol of a life so harmonious it was geographically unreachable, a dream of perfection that could only exist just beyond the horizon of human experience. This classical vision of a northern utopia stands in stark contrast to the chilling legends that would later emerge from those same frozen latitudes. where the European imagination would populate the map not with blessed giants, but with terrors waiting in the cold and dark. Roman galleys pushed beyond the familiar shores of Britain, their crews returning with reports of an island so far north it seemed to mark the very end of the earth. They called this place Thule, a land of frozen seas and a sun that refused to fully set in the summer, a phenomenon that defied the Mediterranean world's understanding of nature. The name itself, Ultima Thule, came to signify the final frontier, the absolute boundary of the known world, first documented by the Greek explorer Pytheas. For centuries, its exact location was a subject of intense debate. Was it Iceland with its volcanic fires, the rugged coastline of Norway, or the immense ice sheet of Greenland? The uncertainty was part of its power. Thule was less a specific island and more a concept, a symbol of the human urge to chart the ultimate limit, to plant a flag, even a symbolic one, on the very edge of existence. It represented the maximum point of exploration, a test of endurance against cold, darkness, and the unknown. This powerful symbol, however, was tragically corrupted in the 20th century. Nazi occultists, searching for a pseudoscientific foundation for their ideology, co-opted the name Thule, weaving it into a dangerous myth about the primordial homeland of a so-called Aryan race. This dark chapter stands as a stark reminder that the stories we tell about distant lands are never neutral. They can inspire noble quests for knowledge, but they can also be twisted to serve the most destructive of human impulses. The original Thule, the one sought by ancient mariners, was a testament to curiosity. It was the human spirit saying, "What lies at the very last point I can possibly reach?" From this frozen concept of a world's end, our gaze must now turn south, to a land of fire that ancient thinkers believed was necessary to balance the entire globe. A sprawling continent of pure theory dominated the southern hemisphere on ancient maps, a ghost land drawn with confidence yet born from pure logic. This was Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, a cartographic phantom that persisted for over 300 years. Its origins were not in sailors' tales, but in the elegant reasoning of ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle, who postulated that the large landmasses of the north must be balanced by an equally massive continent in the south to keep the world stable. This idea of continental symmetry was so aesthetically pleasing and intellectually satisfying that it became an unshakable article of geographical faith. When early European explorers like Ferdinand Magellan glimpsed the jagged shores of Tierra del Fuego, they did not see a remote archipelago, they saw the northernmost tip of this great southern continent. When Dutch navigators first made landfall on Australia, they believed it was another peninsula of the same colossal landmass. Mapmakers filled this theoretical space with all the riches a European imagination could conjure, depicting a place teeming with gold, spices, and untold wealth, a paradise waiting at the bottom of the world. The myth was so powerful it directed the course of exploration for generations, sending ships into treacherous southern seas in pursuit of a geographical certainty that was, in reality, a magnificent intellectual error. The final, definitive search fell to Captain James Cook. On his second voyage, he sailed his ship, the Resolution, deep into the frigid, iceberg-charted waters of the Antarctic Circle, further south than any European had ever ventured. He found no temperate, gold-rich continent. Instead, he encountered an endless, impassable wall of ice, a frozen desert that stretched to the horizon. In that moment, the mythical Terra Australis vanished from the map forever, replaced by the stark, brutal reality of Antarctica. The quest for this theoretical land demonstrates a profound truth about human discovery, that our minds often map the world with the ink of our assumptions long before we ever see its true shores. This grand, collective dream of a southern continent was a scientific pursuit on a global scale, but our next lost landscape was born from a far more intimate and heartbreaking human need. The mournful toll of a bronze bell echoes not from a sunken city in the Mediterranean, but from beneath the cold, grey waves of the Celtic Sea, off the rugged coast of Cornwall, where the water now churns relentlessly. Fishermen's tales speak of a lost kingdom called Lyonesse. This was not a small island, but a vast and fertile land, said to boast no fewer than 140 churches, connecting the mainland to the Isles of Scilly. Its story ends with a single, terrible night of storm and surging tides, when the sea rose up without warning and swallowed the entire realm, its people, and its fields forever. This legendary land is the home of the tragic hero Tristan, of Arthurian romance, a knight whose story of love and loss seems to echo the fate of his homeland. The power of this myth lies in its plausibility. It almost certainly preserves a folk memory of actual, catastrophic coastal flooding. At the end of the last ice age, as massive glaciers melted, global sea levels rose dramatically, and low-lying plains like the one that once stretched towards the Scilly Isles would have been gradually, and sometimes suddenly, inundated. This story is not unique to Cornwall. In Wales, the legend of Cantref Gwaelod tells of a sunken kingdom, a lowland hundred protected by a seawall, lost when a negligent keeper failed to close the gates against a storm. These are not mere fantasies, but powerful narratives that encode a very real generational trauma. They transform the geological process of sea level rise into an epic of divine punishment or heroic failure, giving a human face to a force of nature that reshaped the world. Lyonesse stands as a poignant monument to the landscapes we have literally lost, and to the stories we create to mourn them. From a kingdom lost to the relentless sea, our search turns to a city consumed by the shifting sands of a vast and silent desert. A Canadian adventurer stood before the Royal Geographical Society in 1885, his skin still tanned by the relentless sun, and told a story that would captivate the world. Guillermo Farini described his journey across the Kalahari and his stunning discovery of a lost city. He spoke of massive, dressed stone blocks forming great walls and arches, structures so ancient they were nearly swallowed by the shifting dunes. He even published photographs showing these mysterious linear formations, a silent, sand-choked metropolis in the middle of nowhere. The public was enthralled. Here was a desert counterpart to the great jungle cities being uncovered at the time, a proof that civilization had once flourished in the most inhospitable of places. Yet when other explorers mounted their own expeditions, armed with Farini's own accounts and maps, they found nothing. No carved stone, no grand arches, only the vast, empty expanse of the desert. The lost city of the Kalahari gradually faded from a discovery into a myth. Most experts now believe Farini either misinterpreted a spectacular natural rock formation, known as the Wonderwork Cave area, or that the entire account was an elaborate fabrication designed for fame. But the story's endurance speaks to something deeper than mere deception. The desert is a master of illusion, a place where heat shimmers create lakes on the horizon, and the wind can sculpt stone into the likeness of human architecture. In that disorienting emptiness, the human mind, conditioned to seek pattern and order, can easily project its deepest desires onto the landscape. The myth of the lost city represents the romantic hope that even the most barren and forgotten corners of the world hold the secrets of a grand, forgotten past. It is a testament to our need to believe that no place is truly empty, only waiting for its history to be uncovered. This same desperate hope would drive explorers into a very different kind of wilderness, where the stones were not sun-bleached and exposed, but hidden under a canopy so thick it blotted out the sky. A weathered document from 1753 spoke of a grand, golden city gleaming in the heart of the Brazilian Amazon, a vision that would consume a man's life and define his legacy. This was the obsession of Lieutenant Colonel Percy Fawcett, a seasoned British explorer who had spent years mapping the continent's most remote and dangerous territories. Unlike the conquistadors, Fawcett was not merely a treasure hunter. He was a man driven by a powerful, almost romantic conviction. He believed the Amazon, so often dismissed as a pristine wilderness, held the ruins of a sophisticated, ancient civilization, a place he referred to in his coded notes simply as the City of Z. His theory was radical at the time, challenging the prevailing view of the jungle as a green desert incapable of supporting large, complex societies. Fawcett was convinced that a network of roads and settlements lay hidden beneath the dense canopy, a lost world waiting to be found. His final expedition in 1925, undertaken with his eldest son and a family friend, was his ultimate gamble. They vanished without a trace, swallowed by the same immense jungle they sought to conquer. Their disappearance ignited a century of speculation and tragedy, as over 100 subsequent explorers lost their own lives trying to solve the mystery of what happened to Fawcett. The quest for the City of Z became a cautionary tale of obsession, a story where the search for a legend ended in a very real human loss. Yet, in a profound twist, modern archaeology has begun to vindicate the core of Fawcett's dream. Using advanced technology like satellite imagery and LiDAR, scientists have now uncovered evidence of large, complex settlements in the Amazon, such as the Cuhucugu site. These were not cities of literal gold, but of earthworks, sophisticated agriculture, and road systems that supported thousands of people. The myth was wrong in its details, but right in its grand premise. The Amazon had indeed been home to the very kind of lost civilization Fawcett imagined, proving that sometimes the most fantastical legends are born from a distorted memory of a real and magnificent past. His story marks a pivotal moment in our relationship with these myths, the point where romantic obsession began its slow, painful transition into scientific discovery. While the Amazon's secrets are now being gently coaxed from the soil by technology, our next lost landscape presents a far greater challenge, a kingdom that was not lost to nature, but systematically erased from the historical record by its conquerors. The bells of Wise still ring from the depths of the Bay of Douarnenez, a ghostly chime rising with the tide to warn the living of a city lost to the sea. In the Breton legend, Wise was a marvel of human ingenuity, a magnificent city built lower than the ocean's surface, protected by a massive dike and a single, silver-keyed sluice gate. The king, Gradlon, held this key with solemn responsibility, keeping the restless waters at bay, but his daughter, the Princess Dahat, fell under the sway of a compelling stranger, a figure of darkness who convinced her that the city needed to breathe the sea air. In a moment of reckless passion, she stole the key from her sleeping father and opened the gate. The ocean did not simply flow in, it thundered in, a wall of water that consumed the entire city in a single, catastrophic night. King Gradlon escaped on his magical horse, but was forced to make a terrible choice, casting his own daughter into the waves to save himself from being dragged under. This story is a powerful flood narrative, a clear moral lesson about the consequences of sin and the betrayal of trust. Yet, like Lyonesse, its roots likely lie in a much older, pre-Christian Celtic memory of actual coastal erosion and sudden inundations, a trauma later reshaped by the Church into a parable of divine punishment. The enduring image of the bells still heard by fishermen transforms a simple warning into something more poignant, a memorial for a glorious past that remains just beyond our reach, a beautiful dream forever sleeping beneath the waves. This cautionary tale of a society undone from within stands in stark contrast to our next destination, an island that served as a defiant refuge for those cast out by the established order. A colony founded not on gold or conquest, but on a radical idea of absolute freedom. In the late 1600s, whispers began to circulate among sailors and in European coffeehouses of a place called Libertalia, a pirate republic established on the island of Madagascar. According to the tales, it was the brainchild of a French pirate captain named James Misson, a man supposedly disillusioned by the tyranny and inequality of the Old World. After seizing a Portuguese slave ship, the story goes, Misson did the unthinkable. He freed the enslaved individuals aboard and convinced them, along with his own crew, to join him in founding a new society. This was not a hidden treasure cove, but a functioning utopia, a community that rejected slavery entirely, practiced religious tolerance for all faiths, and shared its wealth and resources equally among every single inhabitant. They elected their leaders, held assemblies to make laws, and lived by a code that valued liberty above all else. The story was popularized in a book attributed to a Captain Charles Johnson, a work that mixed fact with profound fiction. While historians find no solid evidence that Libertalia ever truly existed, its power was never in its physical reality. This myth emerged at the dawn of the Enlightenment, a time when philosophers were beginning to challenge the divine right of kings and imagine societies built on reason and social contracts. Libertalia was the ultimate expression of this new spirit, a fantasy where the most vilified figures of the age, pirates, became the architects of a perfect democracy. It reimagined the pirate not as a mere criminal, but as a social revolutionary, a person who had consciously chosen to exit a corrupt system to build a better one from the ground up. The legend of Libertalia is a political dream, a testament to the enduring human desire to find, or found, a place where the chains of old hierarchies can be broken for good. This vision of a society consciously built on justice stands in stark contrast to our next destination, a landscape not shaped by human ideals, but defined by a total and ancient absence of light. A land exists where the sun is a forgotten memory, and the only light comes from the faint shimmer of snow under a star-pricked sky. Medieval Arab geographers, masters of mapping the sun-baked deserts, wrote with a mixture of dread and fascination about this place they called Zulumat, the land of darkness. It was a territory of perpetual gloom, a vast, frozen expanse in the far north where normal cycles of day and night were completely inverted. Travelers' accounts described journeys where guides had to navigate not by sight, but by the sound of bells attached to their sleds, a haunting chorus in an otherwise silent world. This was not a void, but a populated mystery, a place where a mysterious people lived and where legends spoke of great treasures hidden within the endless night. The myth was often intertwined with the apocalyptic figures of Gog and Magog, monstrous tribes said to be imprisoned behind a great wall, waiting for the end of days. In the minds of these scholars, the terrifying geography of the far north was a fitting home for such biblical terrors. Yet this spectral landscape almost certainly had its roots in real, if misunderstood, reports from traders who ventured into subarctic regions. They would have witnessed the profound disorientation of the polar night, where the sun disappears for weeks or months during winter. For cultures centered around the equatorial day, such a phenomenon was incomprehensible, a climatic reality so extreme it could only be explained as a separate world altogether. The Land of Darkness stands as a powerful example of how fear of the unknown can literally draw a shadowy territory on the map, transforming a natural wonder into a geography of pure dread and wonder. We leave this sunless realm behind, stepping from a world defined by the absence of nature's light into one overflowing with its untamed, magical abundance. The scent of roasted meat fills the air not from a hearth but from a plump pig that trots past, helpfully carrying a carving knife in its own back. This is the land of Cockaigne, a dreamscape born from the bone-deep weariness of medieval peasant life. In this fantasy, rivers flowed with wine, grilled fish leaped from streams onto the bank, and houses were built from gingerbread and cake. The most profound law of this land was the prohibition of all work, a total inversion of the back-breaking labor that defined existence for the vast majority. This was not a spiritual paradise promising salvation in the next life, but a materialist's heaven, offering immediate, visceral relief in this one. It was a world of pure, unapologetic gluttony and leisure, a satirical poem given form. Through bawdy humor and exaggerated comfort, the myth of Cockaigne served as a crucial pressure valve, a shared cultural daydream that allowed a repressed class to laugh at their own hardship, and in doing so, subtly critique the rigid feudal system that enforced it. It was a fantasy of a world turned upside down, where the scarcest resources, food and rest, became absurdly, comically abundant. This collective dream of effortless plenty, focused entirely on the body's desires, stands in stark opposition to a city whose legendary riches were said to be a divine reward for moral and righteous living. A rumor spread like wildfire through the camps of New Spain, a whisper of 7 bishops who had fled the Moorish conquest, sailing west to build 7 cities where the very streets were paved with gold. This was the legend of Shambhala, a siren song that lured Francisco Vázquez de Coronado and an army of over 1,300 men, slaves, and livestock north into the brutal deserts of the American Southwest in 1540. They were guided by stories from a shipwrecked explorer, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, whose own miraculous 8-year odyssey had been twisted and amplified in the telling. His accounts of the indigenous peoples he encountered were reshaped by desperate hope into confirmation of the golden cities. For months, Coronado's expedition endured unimaginable hardship, driven by the shimmering image of those mythical golden spires. When they finally reached the Zuni pueblo of Huaca, what they found was not a city of metal, but one of earth. The multi-story adobe structures, complex and magnificent in their own right, shone a dull, dusty brown in the desert sun. To the conquistadors, blinded by their avarice, it was a vision of failure. They saw only mud brick where they expected solid gold, a civilization they could not comprehend and therefore dismissed. The violent clash that followed was inevitable, a tragic meeting of 2 worlds where one refused to see the value in the other. The myth of the 7 cities was a powerful cocktail, blending the older Portuguese legend of the 7 cities of Antalya with the faint, glittering reports of Pueblo cultures whose artistry and architecture were a different kind of treasure. Coronado's quest left a trail of hardship and conflict in its wake, a stark lesson in how a predetermined fantasy can prevent us from seeing the genuine marvels right in front of our eyes. The dream of golden cities in the desert eventually crumbled to dust, but the human longing for a hidden, enlightened society simply packed its bags and journeyed elsewhere, seeking a home not in arid plains but deep within the earth itself. The shimmering promise of golden cities faded into the harsh reality of sun-baked adobe. Yet the human spirit, ever resilient, simply shifted its gaze from desert horizons to the very ground beneath its feet. If a perfect society could not be found on the surface, then perhaps it thrived in the world below. This belief gave rise to the legend of Agartha, a vast subterranean empire said to span the entire planet through a network of luminous tunnels. Its capital city, Shambhala, was a place of profound peace and advanced knowledge, illuminated by a strange, inner light and inhabited by a race of superhuman beings. This myth, woven from threads of Tibetan Buddhist tradition and Western esoteric thought, proposed that our planet was literally hollow, a honeycomb of inhabited caverns. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this idea was championed by figures like the French occultist Alexander Saint-Yves d'Alveder, who claimed to have communicated psychically with its rulers. He described Agartha as a theocratic utopia, a global network guided by a single, enlightened spiritual leader. For believers, this hidden kingdom was not a refuge but a controlling intelligence, the true, unseen force guiding human destiny from the shadows. The legend offered a compelling answer to a modernizing world's anxieties, suggesting that all the chaos and conflict on the surface was merely a temporary disturbance, and that a higher, wiser order was patiently waiting beneath it all. It transformed the unknown depths of our planet from a place of geological mystery into a theater of spiritual drama, a stage for the ultimate battle between hidden wisdom and surface ignorance. What if every step we take echoes in a kingdom we cannot see? From this global labyrinth of hidden masters, our journey turns to a far more intimate and tragic loss, a kingdom whose story is not one of hidden power, but of a single, devastating era. A river of cold, clear water flowing from the north carried whispers of a kingdom hidden deep in the Canadian wilderness. French explorer Jacques Cartier, during his voyages in the 1530s, listened intently to the stories told by his Iroquois guide. They spoke of the Kingdom of Saguenay, a land ruled by pale-skinned men who wore European-style woolen clothes and possessed immense wealth in gold and rubies. For Cartier and his royal backers, this was not just a tale, it was a confirmation of their deepest hopes. They believed they had found a lost outpost of a European civilization, perhaps even a surviving Norse settlement, or a passage to the riches of the East, all within the interior of what is now Quebec. This compelling narrative drove French exploration further up the St. Lawrence River, opening the waterway that would become the heart of New France. The kingdom, however, remained perpetually just beyond the next bend in the river, a shimmering mirage that forever receded. Historians now suggest the Iroquois accounts were likely a masterful piece of geopolitical strategy. By directing the French attention and their formidable presence northward, the Iroquois may have been skillfully diverting them away from their own territories and into the lands of their rivals. The myth of Saguenay is a profound lesson in the power of narrative. It shows how indigenous knowledge, when filtered through the lens of colonial desire and mistranslation, could create a phantom that shaped real-world exploration and settlement. The French heard a story of gold and pale men because that is exactly what they were primed to hear, projecting their own fantasies of wealth and familiar civilization onto a landscape they were determined to conquer. The hope for a northern kingdom of riches gradually faded into the reality of the Canadian Shield's rugged beauty, but from the warm waters of the Pacific, a very different island paradise was already calling. A simple leather boat, stitched together with animal hide and powered only by oar and sail, carried a vision across the open ocean. This was the vessel of Saint Brendan, a 6th-century Irish monk whose legendary voyage gave birth to a phantom island that would stubbornly cling to maps for over 1,000 years. His story, recorded in the Navigatio Sancti Brendani, is not a simple travel log but a profound spiritual allegory mixed with startlingly real seafaring detail. For 7 years, Brendan and his brethren are said to have journeyed across the Atlantic, encountering wonders that blurred the line between miracle and geography. They landed on an island that turned out to be a giant sea creature, celebrated Mass on the back of a whale, and witnessed crystal pillars rising from the sea and mountains erupting with fire. Their ultimate destination was the promised land of the saints, an island paradise of lush vegetation and perfect peace. This incredible narrative speaks to the remarkable maritime skills of the early Irish monks. In their fragile curraghs, they undertook perilous pilgrimages, a practice they called white martyrdom, leaving their homeland behind for the love of God, seeking solitude and divine revelation on remote islands. They likely did reach Iceland and perhaps even the shores of North America, centuries before the Vikings. The spectral Isle of St. Brendan, often drawn west of the Canary Islands, was a cartographic echo of these real voyages, a place where the spiritual quest for paradise was physically mapped onto the unknown ocean. It was a landscape born from faith, a belief that devotion could literally guide one to a new world. The endurance of this holy isle on official charts, long after the Age of Discovery, reveals a deep human need to believe that the greatest explorers were not just adventurers, but pilgrims, and that the most valuable lands were not just rich in resources, but in grace. This spiritual search for a new world stands in stark contrast to the origins of our next lost landscape, a territory born not from faith, but from the raw political hunger for a trade route that could break an empire. A massive island floats off the western coast of North America, separated from the continent by a narrow sea. This was the island of California, a geographical ghost born from a perfect storm of difficult terrain and irresistible fiction. The era began with early Spanish explorers navigating the Gulf of California's complex, shallow waters, finding its northern end blocked by the silt-heavy Colorado River delta. They reasonably concluded they had found a strait, a passage separating a great island from the mainland. This initial confusion was given immense power by a popular book of its day, a chivalric romance called Los Sergas de Esplendion, published in 1510. The novel described an island called California, ruled by a queen named Calafia and inhabited only by women, a place rich in gold and precious stones. The name and the alluring concept stuck, and mapmakers eagerly fused the explorers' reports with the novel's fantasy. For over 100 years, despite mounting evidence from men who had walked the land, this phantom island was printed and reprinted on maps across Europe. Jesuit missionaries like Eusebio Kino, who traversed the area by land in the early 1700s, presented clear proof that California was firmly attached to the mainland. Yet the power of printed authority was so strong that their first-hand observations were often dismissed in favor of the elegant, established era. The island of California stands as a unique lost landscape, a myth that was actively being debunked even as it was being immortalized in ink. It serves as a profound cautionary tale about the danger of trusting a map's authority more than the reality it is meant to represent. A reminder that our charts can sometimes tell a story we want to believe, rather than the truth of the world itself. From this grand cartographic misunderstanding born of romance and stubbornness, our journey reaches its final destination, moving from a persistent era of geography to the most enduring and beautiful of all philosophical ideals. Beyond the known world, past the Pillars of Hercules where the Mediterranean Sea gives way to the vast, unknown ocean, classical poets placed the final paradise. This was the domain of the Fortunate Isles, a realm reserved not for the living, but for the greatest of heroes and the most virtuous of souls after their earthly journey was complete. Writers like Hesiod and Pindar described these islands as a land of eternal spring, free from sorrow, toil, or winter's chill, where the blessed dead enjoyed a peaceful and blissful existence. This was not a simple afterlife, but a reward earned through extraordinary moral effort. The mythology suggested that a soul had to be reincarnated 3 times and achieve a state of purity in each life to finally earn its rest in this idyllic sanctuary. Here, the great heroes of myth, figures like Achilles and Cadmus, were said to dwell in perpetual honor and comfort. This ancient Greek vision of a geographically specific paradise for the righteous profoundly shaped later thought, providing a philosophical blueprint that would influence early Christian concepts of heaven as a physical garden of reward. When European sailors centuries later finally reached the Canary Islands, the lush, volcanic landscapes with their mild, year-round climate seemed to be a living manifestation of that ancient legend, a tangible confirmation of a dream that had guided human imagination for millennia. The Fortunate Isles complete our map of 25 lost worlds, from sunken kingdoms to subterranean empires. Each one, in its own way, reveals a fundamental truth about the human spirit. These were not just mistakes on a map or simple fictions. They were powerful, collective dreams that answered our deepest needs. They gave us a paradise to seek when the world was harsh, a golden city to pursue when we felt poor, a hidden sanctuary to imagine when we felt exposed, and a heroic afterlife to aspire to when we contemplated our own end. They were the engines of exploration and the blueprints for hope, proving that the most powerful landscapes are not always the ones we can walk upon, but the ones we carry within us, guiding our ships, our ambitions, and our understanding of what is possible. These shared dreams of perfect worlds reveal a profound unity in the human mind. From the deserts of Arabia to the islands of Greece, from the highlands of Tibet to the jungles of the Amazon, cultures entirely isolated from one another conceived of remarkably similar landscapes. They all envisioned a paradise of ease, a city of impossible riches, or a sunken continent lost to time. This was not a coincidence, but a direct response to the fundamental challenges of existence. Faced with the vast unknown, the human psyche employs a powerful tool, storytelling, to impose order on chaos. A blank space on a map is terrifying, but a blank space that might contain the fountain of youth is an invitation. These myths became a psychological compass, orienting entire societies toward hope when the present was defined by hardship, illness, or conflict. They were not lies in the simple sense, but complex cultural narratives that served essential functions. They preserved ancient memories of real geological events, like sea level rise, in the form of flood stories such as Lyonesse. They offered veiled social commentary, as the land of Cockaigne did for the medieval peasant, dreaming of a world where work was obsolete. They codified spiritual aspirations, framing the journey to a place like Shambhala as an inner quest for enlightenment as much as a physical trek. And they served as stark cautionary tales, with the drowning of wise warning against the consequences of broken trust and moral failure. The tangible impact of these dreams is etched into our real-world map. The desperate search for El Dorado, a city that never was, drove the European exploration and mapping of the entire Amazon River basin. The unshakable belief in Terra Australis, a continent that existed only in theory, sent Captain Cook on a voyage that would ultimately chart the icy shores of Antarctica. These phantom destinations were the very engines of discovery, proving that our imagination is not separate from our reality, but a force that actively shapes it. They remind us that every map is a palimpsest, a document where the ink of human hope and fear lies just beneath the surface of the measured coastline. To understand these lost worlds is to understand the beautiful, perilous blend of courage and delusion that has always propelled us over the next horizon, driven by the conviction that the most important destinations are the ones we have not yet found. From the sunken spires of Atlantis to the misty valleys of Shangri-La, these 25 lost mythic landscapes represent more than just fanciful stories. They are a testament to humanity's boundless imagination and its relentless drive to explore. Every empty space on an ancient map was not a void, but an invitation to dream, a canvas for our deepest fears and our highest hopes. The quest for the unknown, whether driven by a desire for gold, a hunger for glory, or a search for divine connection, reveals a fundamental truth about who we are. We are a species that cannot abide a blank space, and so we fill it with cities of gold, fountains of youth, and kingdoms of perfect peace. In an age of satellite imagery, where every physical inch of our planet has been charted and photographed, it might seem that the age of mythic geography is over. But these landscapes have not vanished. They have simply migrated. They live on in the stories we tell, in the books we read, and the films we watch, thriving in our collective consciousness. They remind us that the greatest frontiers are no longer across the ocean or beneath the ice, but within the uncharted territory of our own minds. The next time you look at a map, do not see it only as a record of what is. See it as a palimpsest, a layered document where the faint, beautiful ink of what was once dreamed to be still shows through the lines of the modern world. If this journey through the cartography of the impossible has sparked your own curiosity, We would love to hear which of these mythic landscapes has always captured your imagination. Share your favorite in the comments below and subscribe for more voyages into history's greatest mystery.